Every file has a beginning, a first report, a first witness, and a moment when an ordinary day becomes part of history. Most investigations eventually come to an end. The evidence is gathered, the reports are written, and the files are closed, and people move on. But every once in a while, a case refuses to stay in the past, no matter how much time passes. People continue asking the same question. What really happened? On the evening of November the 2nd, 1966, Woodrow Derenberger left work in Marietta, Ohio, and started the drive home. It was a drive he had made countless times before. And by the end of that evening, his life would never be the same. Nearly 60 years later, people are still trying to understand why. Tonight, we're going back to where it all began. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Into the Weeds podcast. If you've spent any time on this channel, you probably noticed something about the way we approach stories. We don't like starting with conclusions. We like starting at the beginning. Whether I'm requesting police reports through the Freedom of Information Act, or digging through court records, or spending hours in old newspaper archives, I'm always asking the same question. What do the original records actually say? Because stories have a way of changing over time. Not necessarily because people are dishonest. Sometimes it's much simpler than that. One person remembers something differently, another emphasizes one detail over another. A documentary leaves something out, a book adds context that wasn't originally supposed to be, and little by little, the original story becomes harder to see. One of the things that I've learned while investigating cases is that the earliest interviews are often some of the most important. They're given before years of speculation and before internet debates, before people begin telling someone else's version of the story. That's where I wanted to begin with this investigation. I'll be honest, until recently, I had never heard of Woodrow Derenberger. Like a lot of people, I had heard about the Mothman. I'd watched the documentaries over the years and read articles here and there, but somehow no one had ever introduced me to Woody. That changed after a conversation with Nell from thecasedive.com. She mentioned his name, and I remember thinking, who is Woodrow Derenberger? At first, I figured this would be a quick research project, read a few newspaper articles, listen to an interview or two, order a couple of books, and then move on. Instead, every answer seemed to create another question. Who was Woody before anyone knew his name? What happened on November 2nd, 1966? And what did he actually say? Before the books, documentaries, and decades of debate shaped the story into what we know today. So those questions sent me down a path I really wasn't expecting. I tracked down the original television interview and started reading newspaper accounts published just days after the encounter. I did order several books written by people who actually spent time with Woody, and a book that Woody actually wrote himself. I reached out to researchers from that time period and in that area. I contacted the Mothman Museum, and somewhere along the way, I realized something. Almost everyone starts this story in the middle. They begin with the encounter, or the theories, or the question of whether Woody was telling the truth. But before any of that, there was just a man. He was a husband, a father, and a salesman. Someone who got off of work one evening, expecting to make the same drive home he had made countless times before. And that's where I want to begin, not with the mystery, but with the man. One of the things I always try to remind myself when investigating any case is that the person at the center of the story didn't wake up that morning expecting to be part of history. Woodrow Derenberger certainly didn't. Before the interviews and before the newspaper headlines, and before people from all over the country knew his name, he was just simply Woody, a husband, a father, and a hardworking salesman trying to provide for his family. Woodrow Derenberger was born on June 12, 1917 in Parkersburg, West Virginia. By the fall of 1966, he was working as a sewing machine salesman, traveling throughout southeastern Ohio and West Virginia to meet with customers before making the drive home each evening. It wasn't glamorous or exciting. It was work. And from everything I've been able to find, Woody lived a pretty ordinary life. And I think that's really important, because when people hear stories involving UFOs or unexplained encounters, there's often an assumption that the witness was already fascinated by those subjects, that they were searching for something unusual. But I haven't found evidence that Woody was out looking for a mystery that evening. He wasn't investigating strange lights like I would do. He wasn't chasing rumors. He wasn't trying to become famous. As far as anyone knew, he was simply driving home after a hard day's work. Woody worked in Marietta, Ohio, and lived near Mineral Wells, West Virginia. That meant crossing the Ohio River and traveling along roads he knew very well. If you've ever commuted to work, you understand what that feels like. You know every curve, every stop sign, and every little landmark along the way. Eventually, the drive becomes automatic. You're thinking about getting home, what's for dinner, what needs to be done tomorrow, and you're not expecting your life to change. That's one of the things that makes this case so compelling to me. Whatever happened on November 2nd, 1966, it interrupted a routine, not an adventure or an investigation, a routine drive home. As I continued researching Woody's life, I found myself asking a different kind of question. Not, did this happen? That question comes later. Instead, I asked, who was this man before all of this? How did his family describe him? What did his coworkers think of him? And what kind of reputation did he have before anyone had ever heard the name Cold? Understanding the person helps us better understand the story. And before we examine what Woody said happened that night, I think it's just as important to understand how he first told that story. Because one of the biggest challenges in this case that's nearly 60 years old is separating the original account from everything that came afterwards. When I started my research on Woody, I expected to learn quite a bit about the man before the encounter. Who was he? What did his friends think of him? What kind of reputation did he have in the community? Was there anything in his background that might help us better understand what happened on November 2nd, 1966? Those are the kind of questions I always ask when I begin researching a case. But unfortunately, the historical record doesn't always give us the answers we'd like. I did research newspaper archives, read every book I could get my hands on, and reached out to researchers. I contacted the Mothman Museum, like I said. I looked for interviews with people who knew Woody before all of this happened. If those records still exist, I haven't found them. But I think it's important to tell you sometimes I don't know. So I don't know who Woody was before this encounter other than a husband, a father, and a salesman. Could there be more information out there? Absolutely. And I hope there is. And if new information comes to light, I'll gladly include it in future episodes. But based on everything I've been able to find, there simply isn't much documented about Woody's life before November 2nd, 1966. So rather than speculate, I'd rather focus on what we can verify. We know Woody was a husband. We know he was a father. We know he worked as a sewing machine salesman, and we know he lived near Mineral Wells, West Virginia. And we know on that evening of November 2nd, 1966, something happened that changed the course of his life. Everything else begins there. That brings us to one of the most valuable pieces of evidence we have. The day after the reported encounter, WTAP television sat down with Woody to record an interview. Unfortunately, the original video appears to have been lost over the years, but the audio has survived. And to me, that recording is priceless. Not because it proves Woody's story and not because it disproves it, but because we're hearing Woody describe what he says happened while the memory was still fresh, before the books, documentaries, and conventions, and before nearly 60 years of people debating his account. So that's why I want to begin there. Not with someone else's interpretation and not with someone else's opinion, but with Woody himself. Let's go back to November 3rd, 1966, and hear Woody's story in his own words.
Given us permission to interview him, to show his face, and to call him by name. This in itself takes a lot of initiative and, to be very plain, a lot of know-how. Mr. Derenberger, in your own words, would you please relate what happened last night?
Well, I am a salesman and I drive a truck. And last night, shortly after 7 o'clock, I was coming from Marietta, Ohio, coming down Interstate 77. And just before I came to the intersection of Route 47, there was a car past me, overtaking me from behind. And following closely behind this car was this unidentified flying object. And as the car ahead, or the car behind passed me, this object was following close behind it, and it swerved directly in front of my truck, turning crosswise. And when it turned crosswise, it slowed down. It started slowing, not abruptly or too fast, but it gave me plenty of time to step on my brakes and slow down with it. But it forced me to come to a complete stop. As soon as I had stopped, there was a door opened in the side of this vehicle, and this man stepped out and came directly to me, or came to the truck. He walked to the right-hand side of the truck, and he told me to roll down the window. He asked me to roll down the window on my right-hand side of my truck. And I had done what he asked. And this man stood there, and he first asked me what I was called. And I knew he meant my name, and I told him my name. And he asked me, he said, why are you frightened? He said, don't be frightened, we wish you no harm. He said, we mean you no harm, we wish you only happiness. And I told him my name, and when I told him my name, he said he was called Cold. That was the name that he was called by. And he asked me what the city of Parkersburg, he pointed to the lights. He didn't point, but he gave the impression that he was pointing, and he asked me what that was called. And I told him it was Parkersburg. It was a city, a town. And he asked me if most all the people lived in this city or town. And I explained to him that it was a place of business. It's where we transacted our business. That the people lived in communities, outlying communities, most of the people. And when I told him that this was a city, he said that where his home was, that was called a gathering.
Up to this point, Woody has described being stopped on the highway by an object he couldn't identify. A man stepped out and walked towards this truck. He then began asking him lots of questions, not about weapons or about the military or government. He asked Woody what he was called. Then he asked about the lights in the distance. Woody told him that they belonged to Parkersburg. It's such an ordinary question in the middle of an extraordinary story. And I think that's part of what makes this interview so unusual. Woody isn't describing the visitor as threatening, he's describing him as polite and curious. Almost as though he's trying to understand where Woody lives and how the people in the area organize their lives. The visitor reportedly explained that where he came from, a city or town would be called a gathering, and that word becomes important later. But for now, I want to stay with what Woody said during his first interview. Let's continue.
And again, he told me not to be frightened, which I was. I was very frightened. And as far as I can understand, this was all mental. There was no spoken words from him. I knew what he was asking me, but yet he stood there and his mouth did not move. He had a smile on his face. He appeared very courteous and friendly.
This is where the story takes another turn. Woody says that the man was speaking to him, but his mouth wasn't moving. According to Woody, the communication was happening entirely through thought. He says he understood what the visitor was asking, and the visitor understood his answers. Woody could either speak out loud or simply think his response. Now, I understand why this is a point where some people stop taking this story seriously. Telepathy is not something most of us encounter in our everyday lives. It's not even something Woody could demonstrate for the people interviewing him. All he could do was describe what he believed had happened. But this is part of the interview that caught my attention for a personal reason. And before we continue with Woody's account, I want to tell you about an experience from my own life. Not because it proves telepathy exists, it doesn't. But because it explains why I didn't immediately dismiss Woody when I heard him describe it. My stepdad was one of the most unforgettable people I have ever known. He was a retired United States Army Master Sergeant, and from what I was told, he had been one of the top recruiters in the country during his military career. He was also genuinely brilliant. He had wild white hair and looked a lot like Albert Einstein, and after him and my mom got together, people regularly assumed he was my grandfather, which was naturally wonderful for me as a teenager, of course. After retiring from the Army, his life took a very different direction, though. He spent time living in the jungles of Mexico. And when I say he lived in the jungle, I mean it literally. When my stepsister went to visit him, they bathed in the waterfalls. He later returned to Lawton, Oklahoma, where he had previously been stationed and where his children lived. And when him and my mother met, he had parked his motorcycle on a friend's property and hung a hammock between two trees, and that's where he lived. He also called himself a wizard. He studied astrology, ESP, telepathy, and all kinds of different spiritual practices. He also became an incredible craftsman and created beautiful wands using wood, crystals, geodes, snakeskin, and other natural materials. Growing up around him meant growing up around books and ideas that most kids probably never encountered. But when I was about 17, I found a book in his collection about ESP and telepathy. And of course, I read it. And not long after that, my cousin Jessica and I were washing dishes at my mom's house, and I told her about the book. And we decided to do a little experiment. Her boyfriend lived about 20 minutes away. And as far as I remember, he had never been to my house before. Although he may have known that I lived somewhere on the street that I lived on. We decided that I would try to mentally tell him to come to the house. I concentrated on Jessica being there and pictured my mother's red Mustang parked outside. That was supposed to be the sign that he had found the right place. Then we went back to washing dishes. But a short time later, there was a knock at the door, and it was Jessica's boyfriend. Before we told him what we had done, I asked why he had come over and how he knew where to stop. He said he didn't really know. He had decided that he wanted to see Jessica, started driving in our direction, saw my mother's red Mustang, and knew that that must be the house. Jessica and I looked at each other and just started laughing hysterically. Now, I can't prove that telepathy had anything to do with what happened. There are ordinary explanations. He may have known more about where I lived than I remember. He may have already been thinking about Jessica, and it could have been just an incredible coincidence. But I can tell you that we tried it once and he showed up. And so that experiment has always stayed with me. So when Woody describes communicating with someone through thought rather than spoken word, I don't immediately accept it as fact, but I don't immediately laugh it off either. I listen and ask questions and keep looking. Now let's get back to Woody and hear how he described the visitor, the craft, and the rest of that conversation.
And after I talked with him a while, he told me he would see me. He said, "We will see you again," and he left in his vehicle.
Now, Mr. Derenberger, for the sake of our television audience here, the words that you used, cold would be like cold is his name. This is how it sounded to you, that his name was cold.
Yes.
And the word gathering was like we would know together or something like this.
Yes, that's what he meant. That was the impression that he gave.
And he did not move his lips nor utter any sound whatsoever. He talked with you in telepathy then.
That was right. That his lips did not move. He uttered no words at all.
But you talked. I mean, he didn't.
Yes, I talked. He told me twice that I could either talk or I could think, which either would be better or easier for me.
This was an instant thing. There was no hesitation on his part nor on your part. You knew immediately what he was communicating to you, and he knew immediately what you were communicating to him.
That is right.
What color was this object?
This object was between a real dark gray and black. I would call it a charcoal color. It glistened in my headlights. My headlights, when it stopped me, my headlights were shining directly on it.
Were there lights in it?
No, I see no lights of any kind. There was no lights in it.
There were windows.
If there was windows, I couldn't detect them. I couldn't see them.
And when the door, now you had a very clear view from behind the wheel of your van, the driver's seat of your van.
Yes.
He came forward toward you. Did he communicate to you to roll your window down before he got to the side of your truck? Well, was he still in your headlights when he communicated?
He was still in my headlights, walking in a kind of a diagonal way across my headlights to the right-hand side of my truck when he told me then to roll down, if I would please roll down the window on the right-hand side of my truck.
Now, in the beginning, you were driving south on 77.
Correct.
From Marietta.
Yes.
Toward Mineral Wells.
Yes.
A car passed you.
It did.
Immediately behind this car, of what distance?
I would say between 25 and 30 feet. It was very close to the other car.
Came this object.
Yes.
Hovering how far off the ground, would you say?
Well, when I first seen it, I seen it out of the corner of my eye, and I first thought it was just another car, and then I knew it wasn't a car almost immediately, and I turned and looked at it. And I would say it was approximately 30 to 35 feet long, and it came directly across past my truck and immediately turned sideways. It was completely crossed the 2-lane highway. It completely blocked me. I went partly off of the road onto the berm to try to go around it, but I couldn't get around it.
Now, let me ask you something. Then when it came in front of your car, may I have Mr. Derenberger was kind enough to draw us a sketch of what this object appeared to him, and we'll let you see it here. I'm correct then that the object came alongside of your car, veered in front of your car, and as you slowed, or your truck, and as you slowed your truck down, the object slowed down, and then when it landed, it didn't land, it stayed off the ground.
Yes, it was approximately 8 to 10 inches off of the ground, and as soon as it came to a stop, immediately there was a door on the side facing me open, and this man stepped out, and he started walking immediately right to the right-hand side of my truck.
Now, that would be then the picture we have on our screen right now. That would be the angle. Your truck would be going right at that. Is that the idea?
That's
pointed
right.
Now, where would the door be in that particular object there?
It would be right where the large part of the drawing starts.
Where the hump is? Oh,
yes, right
in the
where
front
the
of the
hump.
hump.
Would it be in this direction here?
Back toward no, that's too far, Mr. Wilson. Back up front farther.
About here?
Right there.
Not in here.
Approximately right there. And the door, it resembled just an ordinary automobile door when it opened.
All right. Now it didn't open from a bottom hinge or a top hinge. It opened from a side hinge.
It opened from the.
We know.
Yes, it opened from the side.
How about how was this gentleman? How was this person dressed? What type of clothing did he wear?
He had a top coat on, and it was zippered down the front. His top, the top two buttons, like my coat here, were open, and this outfit was a shiny material. It was a glossy outfit, like it was metallic, I suppose you would call it. And his shirt was a little bit darker than his jacket. And below his coat, he had on trousers of the same kind of a cloth material. And I believe the trousers were just a shade lighter than his coat.
Which would have been a navy blue. The coat
yes.
Would have been a dark blue.
Yes.
Coat. What about the texture of his skin, the color of his skin, his eyes, eyebrows, eyelashes, hairline? What were these? What did he look like?
He looked perfectly natural and normal as any human being. He had his face looked like he had a good tan, a deep sun tan. He was not too dark, but it was just like he had been out in the sun a lot and had a good tan. His hair was combed straight back, and it was a dark brown, and he seemed to have a good thick head of hair. And his eyebrows, his face, his features were very normal. I don't believe that he looked any different from any other man that we'd meet on the street.
Now, this ship that he stepped out of, when he left the ship and started toward your truck, toward your van, the ship remained there as he walked toward you? Or?
No, immediately that he stepped out of the truck, or out of his vehicle, the door closed and the vehicle lifted straight up. It went straight, just as straight as you could point upward, and it went up, and I did see it, and occasionally as I was talking to this man, I looked up and it was still there. It was approximately 50 to 75 feet off the ground, and it stayed there all the time this man was talking to him.
Now, when he talked to you, did he turn his head away as I'm turning my head away now, or did he stare right at you, or did what was his movement?
He watched me when he was talking to me. He looked at me directly in the face, but as there were several cars and several big trucks passed, and as these big trucks would pass, he would turn his head and glance at the trucks.
But there was no, did you look at the object in the air while he was talking with you? Did you glance up at
Yes, in fact, I leaned forward and looked kind of out of my windshield, and I could see it. It was still.
So then this communication that he had with you would not necessarily depend upon him looking you in the eye or anything like that, then, evidently.
No, he did not. In fact, when he first got out of the vehicle, when he told me to roll the window down, it was impossible for him to see my eyes because I was behind my own headlights, and he could not have done it.
How old would you say he was?
He looked to be approximately 35, 40 years old. He was very nice looking man. He was neat. And
what specifically did he say to you? What did he say? Hi, it's a nice evening, or what? I mean, why did he stop you? What was his?
When he asked me to roll the window down, which I did, I rolled the window down, and he told me, he said, I would like to talk to you. And I just couldn't answer, and I just couldn't speak. And that is the first time he told me not to be frightened. He said he wished me no harm, and he talked a little bit in this vein, and he asked me why. He said, why are you frightened of us? He said, we are the same as you. He said, we eat, we breathe, we sleep, we bleed, even as you do. He said, we are like you. And he said, please be not frightened.
Another thing that stood out to me most in this interview wasn't just what Woody said, it's how he said it. He's remarkably calm. He doesn't appear to be trying to convince the reporter of anything, and he's simply answering questions the best way that he knows how. Whether you believe his account or not, that's worth noticing in my opinion. Now, according to Woody, the visitor repeatedly tried to reassure him. He wasn't threatening him, he wasn't demanding anything, and he wasn't warning about some future catastrophe. Instead, Woody describes someone who appeared curious and respectful and even friendly. That's interesting because it doesn't fit the image many people have of alien encounters today. Most modern depictions involve fear, abductions, and confrontation. Woody's earliest account is very different. It reads more like a conversation between two strangers trying to understand one another. As I continued researching, I noticed another thing. Over the years, the story has become much larger than Woody's original interview. New names are introduced, new ideas are added, researchers propose different theories, books expanded on details that aren't discussed here, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to spend so much time with this first interview. It gives us a foundation, and as we move through this series, we'll compare later accounts to this original recording and ask an important question. What stayed the same and what changed? Because when a story has been told for 60 years, that's a question every researcher should really ask.
Did he say where he was from?
He did not say where he was from, but when he asked me what Parkersburg was, and I told him, he said at where I stay or where I live, my home, he said, we call this a gathering.
Did he say anything about him? Did he volunteer? Did he have a family? Did he ask you what you did for a living? Where you worked?
No, he asked me. He asked me if I worked for a living. He asked me if I had to work to live, and I explained to him what I was. He even asked me where I lived, and I told him. And I told him that I was a salesman, and he told me that he was a searcher.
A searcher.
A searcher.
But he didn't tell you what he was searching for.
No, he didn't. He didn't offer me no information other than this, but 2 or 3 times he did tell me. He said, Mr. Derenberger, look at me. He said, do not be frightened, look at me. And I believe if I hadn't have been frightened, I believe that if I had have looked to him, I believe that I could have understood a lot more of what he wanted me to than what I actually did.
You just have this feeling, you mean?
I have that feeling. I was very nervous. I was very upset after this happened. And after I got home and after I had calmed down, I can look back now and I see where I should have asked him questions, and I believe I had the impression that he would have answered these questions readily.
Do you believe in flying saucers?
I have never believed in flying saucers before. I have heard about them a few times. I've even read in the paper about flying objects, but I honestly never did believe in it.
Do you believe in them now?
I believe in what I seen last night. I believe I don't believe it was a saucer, but I believe it was an alien some kind of an aircraft or spacecraft or something.
Mr. Derenberger, we have a program on radio called The Joe Pine Show, and Mr. Pine interviews extraordinary people in various, that are involved in various occupations and some non-occupational type of businesses. And have you ever heard of Joe Pine?
No, I haven't. I don't believe I have.
All right. On one of his recent broadcasts, he talked with a man. He interviewed a man who had not only had somewhat similar experience to what you had last evening, but this gentleman went one step further, and he had been taken aboard a spaceship, which, by the way, was described quite similarly to what you described this particular ship. And this ship, with these people who looked like we do and so forth, took him to Venus and took him to Mars and brought him back home again. What would you think of a story like that if somebody told it to you? What would you think of the person telling you that story? Would you believe that now? Would you believe that that could be possible?
Now, Mr. Mans, I believe now that that could happen. If someone would have told me yesterday before this happened, I would have frankly thought he was a nut. But I honestly believe now that it could happen. I'm surely not going to say it couldn't happen. Now, these men last night, or this man, he gave me no indication that he wanted me on his ship. He didn't ask me to get out of my truck. As I say, he was very friendly and courteous. And
you drink?
No, I do not drink.
You don't drink intoxicating beverages?
No, I do not drink any intoxicating beverages at all. I don't believe in drinking, and I just don't. But what I saw last night, I know that I saw it. It was no figment of imagination. It was there, and I was there. And
now, you said that he also made the statement that we will see you again.
When he was getting ready to leave, he stepped back from the truck about one step, and he said, Mr. Derenberger, we will see you again. He didn't say I, he said we will see you again. And when he got in the truck, or when he got in the vehicle, the door opened as he walked up to the vehicle, and he stepped up into it, and there was another man, or I couldn't describe this man because I could just see his outline, but I did see his arm and hand reach outside and take a hold of the door and pull the door closed. And when the door closed, it made an audible noise like you'd shut a door on a big heavy automobile.
What kind of a noise did this object make when it was hovering above the ground 6 or 10 inches and then upon letting the man off, and you say it went back up in the air 75 or 100 feet. This is an object now that we're talking about that's 8 or 9 feet high, 36 feet long,
yes,
and about 8 or 9 feet across.
That's right.
In breadth. It would, although it's really not too large an object, it's larger than what an automobile, for example.
Yes.
And to lift something like that would take a lot of force to do this. What kind of a sound did this make?
The sound when it was hovering over the ground and when it was lifting, I couldn't distinguish no difference in the sound. It was a low fluttering noise. Well, if you've ever heard the blades of a helicopter as it was idling, setting on the ground, that would be the closest way that I can describe the noise it made. But it was not very, very loud.
Can you make a noise that it sounded like?
It was a fluttering noise. It sounded something like.
But it's a sound you have never heard before.
I had never heard anything like it before in my life.
Let's get back to this. Let's get back to the fella here now. He was how tall?
I would say he was close to 6 feet tall, and he'd weigh around 180 or 185.
I'm 6 feet tall. He's heavier than I am.
He was about your height.
But heavier than
yes, he was heavier. His face was more full. How
much do you figure that I would weigh?
I'd say about 160 65 to 70.
You're right on the button. That's right. There were no lights. This was dark. This time of night, it was dark.
It was completely dark, but I never at any time turned my headlights off, and I also had the lights in the truck on. I have a cab light, and then I have lights back through my truck. And these lights were on. It gave good illumination up close to the truck, but not too far back. But while he was standing and talking to me, I could see him clearly. And at several times there was cars passed and trucks passed, and especially cars that came up from behind me. As they came around this bend, they were throwing their headlights directly on the back end of my truck and was throwing a good light on him.
But no one slowed down or
no one
paused
slowed down.
Like but they would have easily been able to see him.
Yes, they
Do you
could have
suppose
seen
maybe
him.
somebody in our audience might have passed you last evening, standing there talking with this fellow?
I know that there was several cars past me, and one car, as this thing settled down in front of me, was coming to meet me. And when this thing was directly in front of me, this car came to meet me. And his headlights it was in a kind of a curve. This guy came to meet me, would be making a left-hand curve, and his lights would be shining off to the right. But I still think that he could have seen and probably did see whatever this object was.
Glenn, I've been monopolizing here. You sneak in with a question. You have some questions you'd like to ask?
I know personally that Mr. Derenberger was scared because I talked to him a short time after this happened by telephone last night. What did your wife think when you told her about this episode?
Well, my wife was, she took it pretty calmly, but it kind of made her nervous. She worried today before I started back to work. She thought the same thing could happen again, and she believes that what I told her, and she's pretty upset herself about it.
This thought communication, which is apparently extrasensory perception or mental telepathy, when was you first aware that this was the way that you were communicating?
Well, when he first told me to come, when he first got out of his vehicle and started over to my car, that is when he first told me or asked me if I'd roll down my window. At that time, right at that minute, I didn't know that it was mental telepathy. But when he came to the door and looked in through the window from the right-hand side of the truck, then I realized that he was speaking, but his lips were not moving.
Is this the thing that frightened you, that shook you up?
This is what that frightened me more than anything I believe that had happened up until that time, even more so than when I actually seen the object. And I know that he told me not to be frightened. He was very reassuring in his attitude. He was friendly. He smiled continuously while I talked to him.
He kept his arms folded, something like this all the time.
His arms were folded completely at all times, like I said. His hands were hidden. And at the time I talked to him, I didn't think nothing about it. But after I started home, I did wonder why he stood that way. And as I believe one of you gentlemen asked me before about his hands, when this man closed the door, when he got back into the vehicle, I distinctly seen this other man's hand and arm, and his arm looked completely normal in his hand.
Now you described the attire of this person more as a suit, such as I'm wearing, than a uniform.
Yes,
that we know as a uniform.
I would say that it wasn't a uniform. It didn't have, the cut of a uniform. It was more like you'd wear a suit to town. Or
was it a cloth like this?
Well, it was a bright, shiny color cloth. It looked like what my wife calls a hard fabric. It glistened when the lights would shine on it.
A luminous type.
Yes.
The arm that came out, another arm from inside came out to close the door when this gentleman got back. Was that arm clothed in the same type of...
I would say it was identically the same. It looked the same to me exactly.
Now he had on from what you could see, he had on a shirt that buttoned with a collar but no tie.
He had no tie, but I know that the top button of his shirt at the throat, I know he had a button there. I seen that. I looked at that button. His button. Now his top coat was zippered. It had a zipper on the front of his coat. And he looked perfectly normal.
Why do you suppose that he came around to the right-hand side of your truck rather than the nearest side to you? Why do you figure that he came around that side?
Well, the only reason that I could give for that was that I had two wheels off on the berm and two wheels sitting on the highway where I'd been trying to get around this before he got me completely stopped. And I believe that this man actually knew the traffic conditions. I believe he knew that he would be safer on the other side.
Now,
of
if
the
he
truck.
didn't use words in communicating with you, if he used thoughts, why did he have you roll your window down? So that he could hear you?
So
Do you feel that this was why he did it?
I believe that he had me to roll the window down so he could look at me without looking through the glass, because the glass was very rainy street, where it had been raining. And that is the impression that I got, that he wanted the window down so I'd be in closer communication with him, or so we could see each other.
The time when he left you, when your conversation was ended, how did you know that it was all over? Did he say, did he say anything to the effect that, well, I've got to be going now, I have to go, I know, how did he terminate this conversation?
He terminated his conversation very quickly. 1 second we were talking there, and the next thing this vehicle settled down right beside. He stepped back from the truck, and when he stepped back, this thing came back down. Now, it wasn't crosswise the road when it came down. It was heading in the same direction I was. It was right the length of the truck. And when it settled down, he turned and walked up around in front of my headlights and back. But just before he started, he said, Mr. Derenberger, we will be seeing you again.
You believe he will?
Well, I did believe it, but now I don't know how to answer that honestly, because I'm afraid he will, and I don't want him to. But I have a feeling that he will.
You're apprehensive that he will see you, yet
again.
Yet you would probably like experiencing it.
Well, I don't think
prepared this time.
I don't think that I'd be quite so frightened. I think that I could ask him a few questions. I think I could ask him just about as many as he's asked me now.
Well, Mr. Derenberger, we're because of time, we appreciate you taking the time to come down here with us.
When I first started researching this case, I thought I was making a video about a UFO encounter. Instead, I found myself listening to the voice of an ordinary man trying to describe something he believed had changed his life forever. Whether you believe every word of Woody's account, question parts of it, or remain undecided, I hope you'll do what I've tried to do throughout this episode. Start at the beginning, listen carefully, and let the earliest evidence speak before the later theories. Because this story does not end here. In many ways, it's only the beginning. In our next episode, we'll follow what happened after Woody's interview. We'll examine how his story spread across West Virginia and how it attracted investigators like Gray Barker, and how the name Indrid Cold entered the public conversation. We'll also explore how Woody's account became intertwined with the broader wave of strange events that swept through the Ohio Valley in late 1966. Until next time, I'm Amber, and this is Into the Weeds podcast on Military Broadcast Radio. And as always, go out and do something good to change the world for the better today.